Just start recording.
Was in one of those blocks.
Alright.
Then, to add
I'll make one that's like
injury,
sped up.
Radio Shack
Actually, no, I'll
opened a
just
brand new location
I'll just make one big
inside the
uncut
shopping
video
center,
of just
less
me
than
probably just like
500 feet
breathing.
from my store.
Yeah.
So now patrons had a choice between a clean, well-lighted
I'd
establishment
like a
with uniformed security,
This
and acres of convenient
this will
parking,
be the last
or a
part of the
shadowy
witness.
hole in a seedy old office
The
building
video
next
I'm
to
gonna
an
make.
adult movie theater.
So basically, all the lasers,
Consequently,
the
I had
entirety
plenty
of the
time
mountain,
to fool around
the
with the new
all
computer.
challenge attempts, and then the moon
taught
puzzle,
myself basic
the true
Then
challenge.
I learned Z80 assembly. Both, of course, so that I could write games.
Bro, is this the
I also
developer
created
who's saying
self-running
this?
animated demos, which
I
ran all
think
night in the
so.
store window. For the
Okay.
edification of the winos who peed in our doorway.
This is a little bit
Strangely
ridiculous
enough,
though.
the few customers
because
we had didn't seem to be
the,
interested in our new computer,
The
even after
what's
the
it called?
16K memory upgrade. In fact,
forgot
most
what
of
it's
the
called.
people who set off the buzzer on their way
what was
to
I
the
even
front
gonna say?
door weren't there to buy anything at all.
This on the
They were
wiki,
there to exploit
the
a
wiki,
free
it says that
promotion,
this is the
which was
true
bane
test of
Radio Shack
patience.
employees for over 40
It's supposed to be a
years.
test of
The
patience.
battery of the month.
And I will prove them right.
The
I
idea
am very
of this
patient.
promotion was simple.
No one can say I'm
Customers
not patient
got a little
after
red
I do
card
this, bro.
upon which was printed a square for each month.
Literally an entire
12 times
hour
a
of just
year,
listening
the
to some
lucky
guy
sales
talk.
clerk could punch
Bro's
out a
literally
Honestly,
talking about
and give the
buying a new
customer one
AAA
brand
battery.
new
Like,
AAA, AA,
Bro.
C, D, or
Totally
9
don't care at all.
volt
I mean,
battery.
I
Of
honestly
course,
would probably
customers
watch
weren't
this
allowed to choose just any
if it
grade
were
of
like a
battery.
video. Like, just
bro,
watch
you
this
would
guy.
not
At the
watch
time
this,
of my
bro.
employment,
You literally got
Radio Shack
bored at
offered
like
3 different
nothing.
levels of battery excellence.
I got bored
First
at you
were the
doing literally
alkalines,
nothing
powerful,
because it was super
long-lasting,
boring.
and expensive.
Yeah, well, this is me
Hidden
doing
behind the
literally
counter was
absolutely
prescription
nothing.
medication
No,
in
no, no,
gold
no.
embossed
This
blister
guy
packs.
talking
These
about
were
like
most
this
certainly
huge
not
story is
available
actually
through the
kind of
battery
interesting.
of the
It's
month.
kind of
Hey,
like
hey,
a
hey!
book.
Actually, if you really
Next
think
were
about
the
it, I'm
high-end
really
lead
close to being
batteries.
this already.
Sturdy,
Look how
dependable
far the moon
batteries,
moved.
moderately priced, and prominently
true.
displayed near the
The
front
moon
of the
moved
store.
basically like 8
These
miles.
were also
Bro,
not available
Literally,
through the
in the
battery of
total
month
time I've been
club.
playing the game, I think it was like
Finally,
probably
at
16
the
hours.
bottom of the barrel were the standard
1/17th of this
lead
game was one
batteries.
puzzle.
These were literally piled in
Yep.
barrels.
Technically,
cunningly located
technically,
way
2
at the
hours of
back
this
of the
game were just
store,
dedicated
in
to
a
2
dark
puzzles.
corner
Because
near
the
TV
challenge
antenna.
took like an hour, and that was one
Remember
puzzle
TV
technically
antennas?
inside the challenge room.
Customers who came
And then
in
this
looking
place
for their
is
free
one
battery
single
of the
puzzle.
month had to walk the
This
entire
story is
length
actually
of
kind
the
of
premises,
entertaining.
past the CB
Bro,
radios
the
and
stereo headphones and the remote controlled racing
cars.
cars.
Nothing would stop them.
Nothing would stop
On the
them.
first day
I
of
can't
every
touch
month,
the left
like
click
clockwork,
or spacebar,
those
or else
customers
this
sitting in
ends
waving
instantly.
their little red cards. I would look up from my
The
program
most,
and
the
wave them
most
to the back of
annoying
the store.
environmental
It didn't
puzzle,
matter that
in
the
my personal
batteries were
opinion,
only worth 29
was-
cents.
was the
It didn't matter that most of them were
there was
already
there was
half dead.
one
They came,
there was one
they
that was
grabbed,
surrounding the
and as far as I can remember,
surrounding the
not one of them ever
the
paid
the
for
starter
damn
area,
thing.
and that was
I was such a crappy salesman. I was young and foolish.
bro was young and foolish.
I
My
thought
favorite
my
environmental
in game
puzzles,
design
my
was
favorite
happening at the
environmental puzzles were
keyboard.
the ones in the keep,
I
because you
almost
had to
missed
redo
lesson
the things in the
coming
back
through the front
like a
door.
million times, but like it wasn't even
Fortunately,
boring.
I
It was
wasn't
kind of
the
fun
only
actually.
Wait,
person
so-
fooling around
I had to
with
go
games
back-
Where
on
does the moon
micros.
have to go?
All over
The
the
moon
country,
has to go right
people
below
like me
this,
were experimenting.
and then
Okay.
it lets me
Scott
go
Adams
onto it.
was coding what would soon become the world's first
Oh,
commercial
so it has to go
adventure game.
down?
Scott Adams was
Remember
coding.
adventure games?
Remember adventure games?
My future employer,
Yeah.
Infocom, was
Personal
being founded,
software and
along with other
SSI.
legendary
Bro, the
companies,
opposite of the
online
International Space
systems,
Station.
Sirius, Personal Software, and SSI.
Bro got the Space
Those
Station
were exciting
International.
times. Teenagers were making fortunes.
Bro, I wish.
Games were cheap and easy to build. The slate.
Bro, I've literally
was
made a
clean.
game before.
But in 1979,
This isn't actually as bad as
the
I thought it would
biggest
be.
news in gaming had
Rather,
nothing to do
rather
with
good.
computers.
I mean, it's not even close to being done. So
On
I'm
the
sure it's gonna
morning of
get
the
boring
autumn
at the end.
equinox,
But
September
still.
20th,
Yeah.
a new
Bro,
children's picture
On the morning of the
book
autumn
appeared in the stores
equinox,
of
the
Great
new
Britain.
children's picture book
This
appeared
picture
in the
book was
store
rather
stores of
peculiar.
Great Britain.
It consisted of 15 meticulously detailed
Meticulously.
colored paintings
Bro, about a
illustrating
rabbit
a
delivering
slight
a jewel
whimsical
to the
tale
moon.
about a rabbit
Bro's literally just telling
delivering
his
a
entire
jewel
life
to
story.
the
Like,
moon.
Yeah.
On the back jacket of the book was a color photograph of a real jewel, shaped like a running rabbit, 5 inches long,
Bro.
fashioned of
Yep.
18-karat gold,
Bro.
suspended with ornaments.
Oh my
and
goodness!
bells, together with a sun.
Okay,
and
I'm not
moon
even talking
of
about
blue
him. I just
quartz.
spilled water like all over
According
me.
to the blurb underneath, this very
Whoopsie
jewel
daisy.
had been buried
Uh,
somewhere.
Bro,
in
how am I
England.
even gonna like chapter
Clues
this?
pointing
It's
to
gonna be
its
one
location
chapter
were
waiting,
concealed
and then the
in
other
text
chapter
Yeah.
being
and in
done.
the pictures of the book. The
I guess
treasure
I
would
guess
belong
after I'm
to
done,
whoever
I'll
found
just
it
walk around to
first.
all the pillars.
The
No, I'll
book was
walk to the
called
town pillar,
Masquerade.
and then I'll be
It was
like,
created by
"Yo,
an
I beat the
eccentric little
witness,
man
100%.
with divergent
Let's go."
eyes
This is
Yeah.
the
and
third
talent for
ending.
mischief,
This
named
puzzle is the
Kit
third ending, bro.
Williams.
Listening to this
And
whole
I-
tape,
Days,
Wait,
the
actually?
first printing was
bro,
sold
somewhere
out,
in the very
and
middle
the
of this,
empire
it's
that
just gonna
never
say
sleeps
like,
found
"This is a
itself in
message
the
for
grip
people attempting
of
this
rabbit
environmental
fever.
puzzle." Bro, like,
Excited readers
bro, like,
attacked
you're
the
crazy, bro.
paintings with rulers, compasses, and protractors.
bro, protractors.
Magazine articles and TV
I have
specials
had enough
dissected the
protractors,
clues,
and,
floated
like, I haven't
theories,
even really
and
started with
followed
them.
with keen delight
Me
the
and
reckless
protractor.
exploits of the fanatics.
No!
Bro,
One
me when the
obscure
reckless-
park,
Bro, me when the
unfortunately known by
obscure
the
park-
nickname Rabbit Hill,
Bro, Rabbit
was
Hill.
so riddled
Who?
with holes
Bro.
excavated by misguided treasure seekers.
Bro,
that
misguided
the
treasure.
authorities
Bro, I
had to
wish my
erect
town had
signs
misguided
assuring
treasure
the
seekers.
public that no gold
Yeah.
rabbits were to be found.
No
there.
gold rabbits, bro.
Some
What?
hunters
Gold?
Okay,
ended
I
up
think I
seeking psychological
stopped
counseling
paying
for
attention
their
to this story.
obsession. The craze
Yeah.
leapt over
By the way,
the
I tried to
Atlantic
do
Ocean and
captions
invaded
on my
America,
on my
France,
challenge video,
Italy,
and I tried to like
Germany.
edit like the
It
already
sold
made
over 1
captions.
million
Bro,
copies
they
in a
were
few
so
months,
wrong. It was
a
basically
record
like writing the whole
unrivaled
thing
by
again.
any children's title
Bro.
until the advent of Harry Potter.
Bro, Harry Potter.
Over
Harry Potter!
150,000
Oh
copies
my
were
God!
sold in foreign translations, including 80,000 copies in Japanese,
Bro.
despite the fact that the
Dang.
puzzle was only solvable in English.
Ah.
It didn't matter that the Masquerade jewel
Bro
was
made
only worth a
80,000
few
puzzles in
$1,000s.
Japanese when it's only
Many
solvable in
seekers
English.
spent far more than that in their
You suck.
months of exploration and travel.
Bro, how
It
it
was
you can't
the
even make
thrill of the
crosswords in
chase.
Japanese.
The
Because, like,
possibility
Yeah.
of being
All the letters are
one.
different. This is not even
Treasure
letters, it's
hunts,
like sounds or
secret
something.
messages,
So you
and
need like
No,
hidden
it's not
things
fun. It's
seem to
really
exert
weird.
It would need to be
It's
like-
free
irresistible
alphabet.
appeal.
bro cross
They're fun to look
phonetics
for
like
and to talk about.
oh yeah, they're so
This
fun to look
fact of
at.
Human psychology has been exploited in computer games since the earliest
Yeah.
days.
Bro,
It
what?
finds expression in the
Computer
hidden
games
surprises
Oh my god,
What?
Easter eggs!
Easter
Is this an
eggs.
Easter egg?
Atari's Stephen Wright is
Aw,
credited
bro,
with
Atari,
coining this
bro,
term
bro's
in the
on about
first
something
issue
else
of
now.
Electronic
Yo,
Games
guys,
magazine.
computer games.
Oh my god, electronic
The first
games!
Easter egg
around
in a
the
commercial
first-
computer game
The first
appeared in an
Easter egg
early
in a
Atari
commercial computer
2600
game
cartridge
called
simply enough,
Adventure.
By a sequence of unlikely movements and obscure manipulations, players could discover a secret room where the words "created by Warren Robinette" appeared in flashing letters. Over
Okay.
the decades, Easter eggs and their evil twin, cheat codes, have become an industry within an industry.
Bro.
Entire magazines and websites.
By the way, there's actually
are
a
now
bunch of
devoted
Easter
to
eggs
their
in this game.
carefully orchestrated discovery
Alright.
and dissemination.
Most of them are
They're
pretty
part of our
like,
toolkit,
easy to
our
notice,
basic vocabulary,
but some of them are really
the
weird.
language of
Like there's a
computer game design.
sandcastle in one of the in the
Computer
glass
gamers
factory
may have been the
of
first
Symmetry
to
Island,
refer to hidden surprises
and
as
in
Easter
that
eggs,
sandcastle
but we
is the
certainly weren't
is the
first to
sandcastle
use
from
them.
Braid, which is like
Painters,
the puzzle game that
composers,
inspired The
and
Witness.
Artists of every discipline have been hiding
Alright.
stuff in their works
And then
for
that game was
centuries.
also inspired by another
The
game.
recent advent of VCRs and
No.
laserdisc players with freeze frame
Bro,
capabilities
the secret Disney
exposed decades
erotica.
of secret Disney erotica.
Erotica.
Thomas Kincaid,
Bro,
the
me?
self-appointed painter of light, amuses himself by hiding the letter N in
Bro,
his
for
works.
what reason?
A number beside his signature indicates how many N's are hidden in each painting.
Oh,
Picasso, Dali,
Picasso.
Raphael, Poussin, and dozens of other painters concealed all kinds of stuff in their paintings.
bro.
A favorite trick was hiding portraits of themselves, their families, friends, and fellow artists in crowd scenes.
Bro, that's crazy. now I gotta
Greco
check
loved
every single
dogs,
Picasso painting ever.
But the Catholic
Yeah.
Church forbid him from including any in his sacred paintings. So he hid them, usually within the outlines of celestial clouds.
Bro, celestial
Composer
clouds?
Dmitri Shostakovich chafed under the political censorship imposed by the Soviet Ministry of Culture. His symphonies and chamber works are loaded with hidden signatures and subversive subtexts, which, had they been recognized, would have sent him to Siberia.
Damn, that sucks.
Mozart's opera, The Magic Flute, is filled with musical allusions to the rituals
To the
of the
rituals of the
the
Freemasons in the ancient society.
of which he and his mentor
Actually.
were members.
Bro.
But the most famous purveyor of Easter eggs is that champion of the late Baroque,
Bro,
the
little
ultimate
block.
musical nerd,
The ultimate
Johann
musical nerd.
Sebastian Bach.
Jonathan
Bach was a
Sebastian
student
Bach.
of gematria, the art of assigning
Gematria?
numeric values to letters of the alphabet. A
Wow.
equals 1, B equals 2,
That's
C
absurd.
equals 3, etc.
Bro, you gotta stop at like
By
27 or
comparing,
something.
sequencing, or otherwise manipulating these numbers, secret messages can be concealed.
Oh, okay.
Bach took particular delight in the geometrical numbers 14 and 41.
Add and that.
14 is the sum of the initials of his last name.
Oh,
equals 2,
okay.
A equals 1.
Oh, it's
C
the
equals
sum?
3, and H equals
Oh.
Well, that makes it a
8.
lot harder to
31
like.
is the sum of his expanded initials, J.S. Bach.
Bro.
These two numbers
Cool.
show
Goo
up
goo gaga.
over and over again in Bach's compositions. One of the better
Goo goo
known
gaga.
examples is his setting of the chorale Vor deinem Thron.
Oh, okay.
The
I
first
know. I
line
understand
of the
that.
melody contains exactly 14 notes,
Okay.
and the entire melody, from start to finish, contains 41.
That's
Dude, that's
crazy.
so cool.
Another of Bach's
Bro, I'm literally
favorite
learning things from
themes
this?
was the puzzle canon.
It's a counter
A
event.
canon is a melody that sounds good when you play it on top of itself, a little bit out of sync.
Bro.
Frere Jacques and Row, Row, Row Your
Oh,
Boat.
row,
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 Simple,
row.
but a canon can employ any number of voices, and you don't have to play
Bro.
each voice the same
Be
way.
quiet.
You can change the octave, transpose the key, invert the pitch,
Alright.
or any combination. Finding melodies that make good multi-voice canons is a fussy and difficult art, of which Bach was an undisputed master.
Look at the moon.
Now, in a puzzle canon, the composer specifies the basic melody and the number of voices,
Think it's
but
like a
not the relationship of the voices.
1/4 done.
The student has to figure out
Yeah.
the position
Oh,
and
I'm pretty
key
sure
of
this
each
is
voice,
actually an hour long.
and whether to
It's like
perform them
58 minutes
inverted and or backwards. Bach wrote quite a number of puzzle canons. The most famous, BWV 1076, is part of a fascinating story. One of Bach's students, a
Triple
fellow by the
W.
name of Lorenz Misler, founder of the Society of Musical Science. This elite, invitation-only institution devoted itself to the study of Pythagorean philosophy and the union of music
Pythagorean
and
I
mathematics.
philosophy,
thought
bro.
that dude was.
Its distinguished membership
Oh my
reads like a who's who of
Tell me,
German
man.
composers,
Bro, the tally.
including Handel, Telemann, and eventually Mozart.
So fancy.
Applicants for membership in
Whoa.
the society were required to submit an oil portrait of themselves,
Oil
along with a
portrait.
specimen of original music. With nerdly efficiency, Society member number 14 decided to combine these admission requirements into a single work. He sat for a portrait with Elias Haussmann, official artist at the court of Dresden. This portrait, which now hangs in the gallery of the town hall in Leipzig, is the only indisputably authentic image of Bach in existence.
Bro.
Dang.
The
Only
Haussmann
one guy.
portrait shows Bach dressed in a formal coat with exactly 14 buttons. In his hand is a sheet of
Why'd
music
he
paper,
pause for so long?
upon which is written
Oh,
a puzzle
no.
canon
Now
for
you better be
6
talking the whole time.
simultaneous voices.
Mhm.
In 1974, a manuscript was discovered which proved that this
Go to
canon
sleep.
was the
You wake up,
13th
the
of a
puzzle-
series of exactly
Bro.
14 canons based on the ground theme of the famous
Dangleberg?
Golden Variations. As if these musical gymnastics
Bro, I got a
were
snow
enough,
globe in front of me with
Bach
dolphins
liked
on
to
it.
hide messages in his compositions
Nice.
by assigning
You went
notes
dolphin
to the letters.
snow globe?
His initials, BACH, correspond to the pitch sequence B flat, A, C, and B natural, in German letter notation.
That's natural.
This theme makes its most memorable appearance in the last bars of his final composition, The Art of Fugue, published soon after his death in 1750.
I was a little bit
The
old.
word fugue comes from the Latin fuga, which means flight, as in running away.
I do fatigue.
So the art of fugue is the art of flight, the art of taking a theme and running with it.
That is not what flight.
Bach wrote hundreds of
And run.
fugues, but
You and
none
I-
as sublime as
you and
this
I do
sequence
fatigue.
of 14.
Fagoo.
In the last and most complicated fugue in the series, the first and second
Bro,
sections
you were
develop
doing a lot of
normally.
that.
This is followed by the BACH signature, and then suddenly, without any warning or structural justification, the fugue stops, dead in its tracks. One of the composer's 20
Dead.
children, his son Carl Philipp Emanuel, claimed that Bach died moments after those last few notes were written.
Who wrote a song
This
that
story
died?
is probably apocryphal. The Easter eggs in Bach's music
What is
are a pleasant
apocryphal music?
I
obscurity,
forgot he was talking
known
about Easter eggs.
chiefly to professors and students of Baroque music.
Bro, this is just a
But in March
subsection of
of
what he's trying to talk
2002,
about.
when this lecture was first delivered,
March of
those
2022.
Easter eggs
I mean,
were the
2000.
talk of the entire classical music
How
industry.
does you go from
Sitting
battery
near the
to
top
this?
of the classical music charts
Bro,
that
I was
month
literally
was a
just-
compact
I was
disc on
literally
the
just
ECM
before this,
label
just
called
before this, I
Lorimer.
was literally just
It
like
was
doing
performed by the
literally
Hilliard
anything
Choral
else except for
Ensemble,
this.
together with a talented but, until then, little-known
Christoph.
Christoph Poppen. The music
Christoph.
on Morimer
Christoph
is
from
based on
Frozen?
the geometriacal analysis of Bach's
Geometriacal.
Partita in D
The
minor for solo violin.
Geometriato.
This analysis, by German professor Helga Thon, assigns
Helga.
numeric
Helga.
values to
Isn't
the
that the name of
duration
some
of notes,
person
the
from
number
Harry
of
Potter?
bars, and the German letter notation of the partita. In doing so, she claims to have discovered
Bro,
the
I'm just
complete
gonna
text
skip
of
to
several
like one of these
liturgical
random parts. You gotta
ceremonies
leave though
included in the
soon,
notes.
sometime.
Mhm.
So
CD
half this
presented
video
these
is gonna
hidden
just be
texts
us talking, and then the
superimposed
other half is
over
gonna be
the original
complete
music.
silence
The result
because
was
I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
watching YouTube videos
melancholy, dark,
Mhm.
haunting,
on
and
my
very
I guess on my
popular.
phone actually.
Quite a
That's
few
so
music
sad.
critics
me when a
attacked
few
this disc.
music critics
They
attack
didn't buy
this.
Professor Thon's analysis.
I did buy
Dismissing it
Professor
as a
Thornton's
combination of
analysis,
numerology
dismissing
and
it as a
canon marketing.
combination of
Their
numerology.
caution was not without basis.
Bro.
Numerology is a slippery slope
Slippery
down
slope.
which many
The
a
very fine
fine
man
mind
has lead
has
into his
slid to
doom.
its doom.
To its doom.
Allow me
It
to
was
offer
doom.
an amusing anecdote.
Oh my
from
god,
my
a music
own
antidote
experience.
from my own
Back in
experience.
the early 90s, before the internet took off, one of the more
Yeah,
popular
we're
online
getting really
bulletin
close.
board
Prodigy?
systems was a service called Prodigy.
Bro, that's the
I
name
bought
of
an account on
a
Prodigy
like
so I
wizard
could join
game
a
that I played
fraternal
like
interest
once
group
ever in
and
school.
gossip
Yeah,
with fellow
no.
members
Oh, that
around
game
the
is
country.
sick.
One
That
day,
game
a
sucked. I
stranger
hated it.
appeared on our bulletin board.
I love it, dude.
Right
You
away,
love
I
Prodigy,
knew we
don't
were in
you?
trouble. This
But-
fellow, whose name was
But
Gary,
Gary!
began
Gary's my
spouting
Gary.
all kinds of apocalyptic nonsense
apocalypse,
about worldwide
apocalyptic
conspiracies, secret
nonsense,
societies,
devil
and
worship.
devil worship. At
Bro,
first, he
Gary
tried to
over
be
here
polite.
doing
He questioned his
apocalyptic
sources,
devil worship.
corrected his histories, logically refuted his claims, and tried to behave in a civilized manner.
Civilized
But
manner.
instead of soothing him, our attention only made him worse.
Be when the attention makes him worse.
Conspiratorial warnings became
Sounds like
urgent,
Trump. Yeah.
approaching hysteria. He began to threaten people who disagreed with him. To coin a phrase, Gary
Uh-oh.
went all uppercase.
All
But his most
uppercase.
urgent warnings weren't about the gays,
Uh-oh.
the Jews, the Rockefellers, or the Illuminati.
Ow.
Gary, the greatest enemy of mankind, was Santa Claus. Gary claimed to possess a secret numerical formula that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Santa Claus
You and
was
Santa
the
Claus is the
avatar
avatar
of
of
the
the Antichrist?
Antichrist. Intrigued,
Using a
we pressed
numerical
Gary
formula.
to reveal his formula. In doing so, we walked right into his trap. We should have known
What?
he had a book to sell.
Write
I
a book
felt
to sell.
hurt. I sent him the 15 bucks. Less than a week later, the book arrived. Above an ominous photograph of the Washington Monument was emblazoned the title, 666, The Final Warning.
You went 666.
Inside this private
Bro, I just realized I had a
494
giant lollipop.
page monster, Gary reveals a simple
forgot I had a
Okay,
giant lollipop.
formula,
Thomas, I gotta
which he
go now.
claims was developed by the
No!
ancient Sumerians.
No.
This formula
I will
assigns
cry for
successive
days, for
products
days.
of 6
If
to each letter
if
of the
I could
alphabet.
stay here, I would.
A equals 6, B equals 12, C equals 18,
So,
etc.
well, I gotta
Imagine
go
my
anyway.
dismay
So,
when I applied
Okay.
this ancient
I
formula
hope you don't
to the
fail,
name
which
Santa
I really
Claus
hope you don't.
and obtained the
Okay.
blasphemous sum of 666,
Good
the
luck on your
biblical
journey.
number of the beast.
Bro.
I went on Prodigy and reported to the
Bye.
stunned members of our interest group that Gary was right after all. There could be no doubt that according to the unimpeachable wisdom of ancient Samaria, Santa Claus was the Antichrist. I then went on to point out several other names which, when submitted to Gary's formula, also produced the sum 666. Names like St. James, New York, and New Mexico.
Bro, New Mexico?
Soon the bulletin board was filled with discoveries like computer, Boston tea, and most sinister of all, sing karaoke.
Bro.
Gary left us alone after that. I got my $15 worth. But Gary is hardly the first person to connect secret codes to the Bible. People have been looking for Easter eggs in the Bible for hundreds of years. The Hebrew mystical tradition of Kabbalah can be described as a geometriacal meditation on the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The advent of computers has made the application of numerology to the Bible fast and efficient. The latest spate of Bible searching was instigated by a book published in 1998 by Michael Drosnin, a former Wall Street Journal reporter. His book, The Bible Code, applied a skip cipher in which every nth character in a text is combined to form a message. By applying his skip cipher to the Hebrew text of the Old Testament, Drosnin claimed to have discovered predictions of World War II, the Holocaust, Hiroshima, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin and both Kennedys, the moon landing, Watergate, the Oklahoma City bombing, the election of Bill Clinton, the death of Princess Di, and the comet that collided with Jupiter. He also found predictions of a giant earthquake in LA, a meteor hitting the Earth, and nuclear Armageddon, all scheduled to occur before the end of the last decade. The Bible Code spent many weeks on the bestseller lists, spawning several sequels and dozens of imitators. The Bible has certainly attracted its share of crackpots, but for the real hardcore egg hunters, nothing can rival the ingenuity, the tenacious scholarship, the stubborn zeal of those who seek the answer to the ultimate literary puzzle, a poisonous conundrum that has squandered fortunes, destroyed careers, and driven healthy, intelligent scholars to the brink of madness and beyond. Who wrote Shakespeare? The essays and books devoted to the Shakespeare authorship problem are sufficient to fill a large library. Several such libraries actually exist. Not even a day-long tutorial, much less an hour lecture, can begin to do justice to this complex, bizarre, and dangerously tantalizing story. Nevertheless, for the unacquainted, I will attempt to summarize the issue in a few paragraphs. The undisputed facts of Shakespeare's life and career could be scribbled on the back of a cocktail napkin. We know for a fact that a man named William Shakespeare was born in 1564 in or around the village of Stratford-upon-Avon. We know that he had a wife and at least 3 children. We know he bought property in Stratford, was involved in several lawsuits with his neighbors, and died there in 1616, aged 52. We also know that during those same years, a man with a last name similar to Shakespeare worked as an actor on the London stage, eventually becoming co-owner of some of the theaters there. We also know that about the same time, a number of most excellent poems and plays were published in London under the name Shakespeare. We do not know for a fact that the landowner in Stratford and the actor in London with a similar last name were one and the same man. We do not know for a fact that either man had anything to do with the poems and the plays. All we know is that those poems and plays have, in the 400 years since their composition, come to be regarded as a pinnacle of Western culture. The works attributed to Shakespeare appear to have been written by a man or woman who knew something about just about everything. They're filled with references to mythology and classic literature, games and sports, war and weapons of war, ships and sailing, the law and legal terminology, court etiquette, statesmanship, horticulture, music, astronomy, medicine, falconry, and, of course, theater. Therein lies the problem. How could a farmer's son of uncertain schooling, from a mostly illiterate country village, a man of practically no account at all, wield such encyclopedic learning, with so much eloquence and wit, so much wisdom and human understanding? For the first 150 years, nobody questioned the traditional history of the bard. Then, in the late 18th century, Reverend James Wilmot, a distinguished scholar who lived just a few miles north of Stratford, decided to write a biography of the famous playwright. Dr. Wilmot believed that a man as well educated as Shakespeare must have owned a fairly extensive library, despite the fact that not a single book or manuscript is mentioned in his will. Over the years, he speculated, some of those books must have found their way into local collections. And so, the good Reverend Doctor scoured the British countryside, taking inventory of literally every bookshelf within 50 miles of Stratford. Not a single book from the library of William Shakespeare was discovered. Neither were there found any letters to, from, or about Shakespeare. Furthermore, no references to the folklore, local sayings, or distinctive dialect of the Stratford area could be found in any of Shakespeare's writings. After 4 years of painstaking research, Dr. Wilmot concluded, to his own dismay, that only one person contemporary with Shakespeare of Stratford had ever demonstrated the wide-ranging education and expressive talent needed to compose those poems and plays. That man was the multilingual author, philosopher, and statesman, inventor of the scientific method, chancellor to the courts of Queen Elizabeth and King James, Sir Francis Bacon. Dr. Wilmot never dared to publish his theory, but before he died, he confided it to a friend, James Cowell, who, in 1805, repeated it to a meeting of the Ipswich Philosophical Society. The members of the society were suitably outraged, and the scandalous matter was quickly forgotten. Then, in 1857, a lady from Stratford, Connecticut, published a book called The Philosophy of the Plays of Shakespeare Unfolded. In this book, Miss Delia Bacon, no relation to Francis, claimed that the works of Shakespeare were written by a secret cabal of British nobility, including Sir Walter Raleigh and Sir Philip Sidney, as well as Sir Francis Bacon.
If anyone
Delia
if
Bacon's
anyone
book
hears this,
electrified the
good
world
for you.
of letters. Battle lines were drawn between the orthodox Stratfordians and the heretical Baconians. Literary societies and scholarly journals were formed to debate the evidence. Hundreds of pamphlets, newspaper articles, and essays were published defending each side and ridiculing the opposition with that self-aggrandizing viciousness peculiar to tenured academics. Armed with her explosive book, Delia Bacon journeyed to Stratford-upon-Avon and, unbelievably, obtained official permission to open Shakespeare's grave. However, when the moment came to actually lift the stone, Delia's self-doubt precipitated a catastrophic nervous breakdown. She later died penniless in a madhouse. Around 1888, things began to get a bit out of hand. U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly of Minnesota became interested in the Shakespeare controversy. One day, browsing through his facsimile copy of the First Folio of 1623, he noted that the word bacon appeared on page 53 of the Histories and also on page 53 of the Comedies. He also noted that Sir Francis Bacon had written extensively on the subject of cryptography. Donnelly began counting line and page numbers, adding and subtracting letters, drawing lines over sentences, circling words, and crossing them out. The result was a complex and virtually incomprehensible algorithm, which he claimed was invented by Bacon to hide secret messages inside the First Folio. The greatest Easter egg hunt in the history of Western civilization had begun. Here are just a couple of the sillier highlights. A doctor named Orville Owen of Detroit constructed a bizarre research tool he called the Wheel of Fortune. This wheel consisted of two giant wooden spools wrapped with a strip of canvas 2 feet wide and 1,000 feet long. Onto this canvas, he glued the separate pages of the complete works of Bacon, Shakespeare, Marlowe, Greene, Peele, and Spenser, together with Burton's Anatomy of Melancholy. By cranking the spools back and forth, Dr. Owen could quickly zip across the pages in search of clues and cross-references. Employing a large team of secretaries and stenographers, Owen claimed to have uncovered a complete alternative history of Elizabethan England, as well as several entirely new Shakespeare plays and sonnets. Listen to this hidden verse, supposedly penned by the mighty bard himself, which inspired Dr. Owen to build his Wheel of Fortune. Take your knife and cut all our books asunder, and set the leaves on a great firm wheel, which rolls and rolls, and turning the fickle rolling wheel, throw your eyes upon Fortune, that goddess blind, that stands upon a spherical stone, that turning and inconstant rolls in restless variation. After publishing 5 thick volumes of this rubbish, Owen announced the discovery of an anagram, indicating that Bacon's original manuscripts were buried near Chepstow Castle on the River Wye. Owen spent the next 15 years and thousands of dollars excavating the bed of the river with boat crews and high explosives. He died before anything was found. A fellow named Arnsberg wrote an entire book based on the analysis of the significance of a suspicious crack in the tomb of Bacon's mother. A Ray of Sanity finally appeared in 1957. To those familiar with the science of cryptology, the name William Friedman needs little introduction. During World War II, Colonel Friedman was the head of the U.S. Army's Cryptoanalytic Bureau. He is credited with cracking the Japanese Empire's most sensitive cipher. After the war, the colonel decided to apply his expertise to the study of the Shakespeare ciphers. He interviewed several of the experts in the field and prepared a detailed scientific analysis, which he published under the title The Shakespeare Ciphers Examined. His conclusion? In a word, bunk. According to the standards of cryptologic science, not one of the hidden messages purportedly discovered in Shakespeare's works was plausible. The rules used to extract these messages from the texts were non-rigorous, wildly subjective, and unrepeatable by anyone except the original decipherer. The people involved were not being dishonest. They were channeling their preconceptions. They were trapped in a labyrinth of delusion, mining order from chaos. Anglers in a lake of darkness. Lear, Act 3, Scene 6. You would think that Friedman's cold and ruthless exposure would be enough to silence the heretics once and for all. Not a chance. The books and TV specials and websites and conferences and doctoral dissertations keep right on coming. I should point out that the Shakespeare authorship issue is not only the preoccupation of cranks and weirdos. A substantial number of respected authors and Shakespeareans have expressed serious doubts about the traditional origin of the plays. The list includes Nathaniel Hawthorne, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Walt Whitman, Henry James, Sam Clemens, Sigmund Freud, Orson Welles, and Sir John Gielgud. Living skeptics include the artistic director of the New Globe Theatre, Mark Rylance, Michael York, Derek Jacobi, Kenneth Branagh, and even that most revered and scholarly of contemporary Shakespearean actors, Keanu Reeves. The current leading candidate for the authorship is Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, a theory first proposed in 1920 by an English schoolmaster with the unfortunate name J. Thomas Looney. What is it about Bach, the Bible, and the works of Shakespeare that inspires this intense scrutiny? Nobody's looking for acrostics in Chaucer or Keats. There are no hit CDs of the secret chorales of Wagner or Beethoven. For the answer, we need to recognize the unique roles which the Bible and Shakespeare have played in the development of Western culture. No other single work of literature has influenced modern English more than the translation of the Holy Bible published in 1611 under the auspices of King James I. The King James Bible exemplifies the meaning of the word classic. It has been called the noblest monument of English prose, the very greatest achievement of the English language. It has served as an inspiration for generations of poets, dramatists, musicians, politicians, and orators. Countless people have learned to read by repeating the phrases in this, the only book their family possessed. Our constitutions and our laws have been profoundly shaped by its cadences and imagery. But even the glory of the King James Bible, compiled by a committee of 46 editors over the course of a decade, pales before the dazzling legacy of the Swan of Avon. The lowest estimate of Shakespeare's working vocabulary is 15,000 words, more than 3 times that of the King James Bible, and twice the size of his nearest competitor, John Milton. His poems and plays were written without the aid of a dictionary or a thesaurus. They didn't exist yet. It was all in his head. When Shakespeare had a thought for which Elizabethan English had no word, he invented one. The Oxford English Dictionary lists hundreds of everyday words and phrases which made their first appearance in the pages of the Bard. Addiction, alligator, assassination, bedroom, critic, dawn, design, dialogue, employer, film, glow, gloomy, gossip, hint, hurry, investment, lonely, luggage, manager, switch, torture, transcendence, wormhole, zany. Hamlet alone contains nearly 40 of these neologisms. Who today would have this audacity, this giddy exuberance of invention? Only one other English author even approaches Shakespeare's facility for coining new words: Sir Francis Bacon. In the modern era, the record holder is Charles Dodgson, better known as Lewis Carroll, who, interestingly, also happens to be the second most quoted author in English, after Shakespeare. Everyone has been profoundly molded by the influences of the King James Bible and Shakespeare. Like it or not, all of us peer at the world through the lenses of these great works. They are the primary source documents of modern English thought, the style guides of our minds. Contemplating these dazzling jewels of wisdom and eloquence gives rise to an extraordinary feeling, a potent, rare, and precious emotion with the potential to completely upset your life. An emotion powerful enough to make a man abandon his wife and children, forfeit career and reputation, lay down his possessions, and follow his heart without questioning. That sweet, sweet fusion of wonder and fear, irresistible attraction, and soul-numbing dread known as awe. Awe is the grail of artistic achievement. No other human emotion possesses such raw, transformative power, and none is more difficult to evoke. Few and far between are the works of man that qualify as truly awesome. It is awe that convinces a rabbi to spend a lifetime decoding Yahweh from the Pentateuch. Awe that sends millions of visitors each year to the pyramids of Giza, Guadalupe, and Mecca. It was awe that drove poor Delia Bacon to her doom. Now, please don't come away from this lecture thinking that the key to awesome game design is the installation of Easter eggs. Ordinary games with their contrived Easter eggs and cheat codes are like the Battery of the Month Club. You have to trudge down to the back of the store to get what you really came for. If superpower is what people really want, why not just give it to them? Is our imagination so impoverished that we have to resort to marketing gimmicks to keep players interested in our games? Awesome things don't hold anything back. Awesome things are rich and generous. The treasure is right there. One afternoon, I was sitting alone behind the counter at that old Radio Shack store. My boss had stepped out for some reason. An elderly woman walked through the front door. Like most of our customers, she was shabbily dressed, probably on a fixed income. I assumed she was there for her free battery, but instead, she placed a portable radio on the counter. This little radio came from the days when they boasted about the number of transistors inside on the case. It was completely wrapped in dirty white medical tape. The woman looked at me and asked, "Can you fix this?" Slowly, I unwrapped the medical tape, peeling away the layers until the back cover of the radio fell off, accompanied by a cloud of red dust. The interior of the radio was half eaten away by battery leakage and corrosion. I looked at the radio. I looked at the old woman. I looked back at the radio. I reached behind me, where the expensive alkaline batteries were hanging like prescription medication, and removed a gleaming 9-volt cell from its gold blister pack. Then I pulled a brand new transistor radio from a box, installed the alkaline, and helped the lady find her favorite station. No money changed hands. She left the store without saying a word. Awesome things are kind of like that. Bach offered his students very specific insight into the source of awe. In addition to BACH, 2 other sets of initials are also associated with Bach's music. These initials are not hidden in the notes. Instead, they're scrawled right across the top of the manuscript for the whole world to see. The initials are SDG and JJ. SDG stands for the Latin phrase Sole Deo Gloria, to the glory of God alone. JJ stands for Jesu Juva, help me, Jesus. Bach wrote all of his great masterpieces sub specie aeternitatis, under the aspect of eternity. He did not compose only to please his sponsors or to win the approval of an audience. His work was his worship. Bach once wrote, "Music should have no other end and aim than the glory of God and the recreation of the soul. Where this is not kept in mind, there is no true music, but only an infernal clamor and ranting." The name of the power that moves you is not important. What is important is that you are moved. Awe is the foundation of religion. No other motivation can free you from the limits of personal achievement. Nothing else can teach you the art of flight. Computer games are barely 40 years old. Only a few words in our basic vocabulary have been established. A whole dictionary is waiting to be coined. The slate is clean. Someday soon, perhaps even in our lifetime, a game design will appear that will flash across our culture like lightning. It will be easy to recognize. It will be generous, giddy with exuberant inventiveness. Scholars will pick it apart for decades, perhaps centuries. It will be something wonderful, something terrifying, something awful. A few years ago, I was invited to speak at a conference in London. My wife joined me, and we took a day off for some sightseeing. We decided to visit England's second biggest tourist attraction, Stratford-upon-Avon. It was cold and rainy when our train arrived. Luckily, most of the attractions are just a short walk from the station. We visited Shakespeare's birthplace, a charming old house along the main street, which attracts millions of pilgrims every year, despite the complete lack of any evidence that Shakespeare was born there or even lived anywhere near it. We went past the school where Shakespeare learned to read and write, although no documents exist to prove his attendance. We visited Anne Hathaway's cottage, the rustic country farm where his wife spent her childhood, although no record shows anyone by that name ever having lived there. Finally, we came to the one location undeniably associated with Shakespeare, Trinity Parish Church, on the banks of the River Avon, where a man by that name is buried. This beautiful church is approached by a long walkway between rows of ancient gravestones, shaded by tall trees. The entrance door is surprisingly tiny. No cameras are allowed inside. The interior is dark and quiet. Despite the presence of busloads of tourists, the atmosphere is hushed and respectful. A few people are seated in the pews, deep in prayer. An aisle leads up the center of the church. The left side of the altar is brightly illuminated. On the wall above is a famous bust of the bard, quill in hand, gazing serenely at the crowd of pilgrims. On the floor beneath, surrounded by bouquets of flowers, at the very spot where Delia Bacon lost her mind, the gravestone of William Shakespeare bears this dire warning. Good friend, for Jesus' sake, Forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man who spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. Every year, 3 million pilgrims arrive from every nation on earth to approach this stone and consider the likeness of a man whose body of work can only be described as awesome. By contrast, the right side of the altar is dark and featureless. Nobody of any consequence is buried there. The only point of interest is a wooden case of simple design, carved of dark oak. Inside the case, sealed beneath a thick sheet of glass, lies a large open book. A plaque on the case identifies this book as a first edition of the King James Bible, published in 1611 when Shakespeare was 46. Not many pilgrims visit this side of the altar. Most of those that do simply glance at the book, read the plaque, and move along. A few, more observant, note that the Bible happens to be opened to a page in the Old Testament, the book of Psalms, chapter 46. No explanation is given for this particular choice of pages. For the initiated, none is necessary. If you are of inquisitive bent, if you are intrigued by English history and literature, if you value your peace of mind, cover your ears now. In the year 1900, a scholar noticed something about the King James translation of Psalm 46. Something terrifying, something wonderful. The 46th word from the beginning of Psalm 46 is shake. The 46th word from the end is spear. There are only two possibilities here. Either this is the finest coincidence ever recorded in the history of world literature, or it is not. The Earth revolves around only one sun and has only one moon. The moon happens to be 400 times smaller than the sun. The sun happens to be 400 times farther away. And the apparent paths of the moon and sun in our sky happen to intersect exactly twice every month. Which means that every now and then, at long yet precisely predictable intervals, the lunar disk slips across the face of the sun and just barely conceals it for a few wonderful, terrible minutes. A fine coincidence, no? In June of 1977, a little man with divergent eyes and a talent for mischief ascended a hilltop in the British village of Ampthill. At the summit of this hill is a tall, slender cross, a memorial to Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of Henry VIII. The sun, high in the south, cast the shadow of the cross upon the grassy hillside. At exactly 12 noon, the man removed from his pocket a bar magnet. He turned the magnet so its north pole was facing south and buried it under the shadow of the cross. 2 years later, a few hours before the publication of his first book,
Solar
the man
eclipse
returned
is about to
that
happen,
hillside, this time
which means
in
I'm
the
about
dead
to win.
of night. He used a compass to locate the magnet he had buried. In that same place, he dug a hole in the ground and placed inside a ceramic container, inscribed with the following words:
I guess right now it's gonna be done.
I am the keeper of the jewel of masquerade, which lies waiting safe inside me for you or eternity.
That was really cool. And I'm gonna guess the video probably ends. That was amazing. That was actually so good. I loved that. That was so fun. It sounded like it was gonna be horrible, but then the the s- the story, the thing that the guy said, I never even turned on my phone to go watch YouTube videos. I just listened to it the entire time. The that story was crazy. I think it was about Easter eggs, but it also mentioned uh it talked a lot about Shakespeare, coincidences, the Bible, some guy called Bach who made music. Um yeah, that right there. Whole game done. Where's the sun? This this game was very fun. Very, very good. Extremely good. Um Now I wouldn't want to do the I would not want to do the that moon puzzle again because I've already watched it and listened to everything he had to say, and now I don't really care. But for the hold on, let's walk up the mountain actually, not run. For great game. Wonderful game. Not really sure what else to say. I feel like this game is too short. Uh, they should have added more things to it. The what's it called? I liked everything about it. Very fun. Environmental puzzles were epic. I beat almost all of them naturally, but obviously, of course, some of them are unbelievably unrealistic to get, like without cheats, because some of them were just ridiculous. Like, oh yeah, you have to go over here, or you have to ride a boat. You have to send the boat off, then go or through the entire treehouse, around through the keep, and then around to a uh a around to the what's it called? Around to the little couch back there, and then you have to you have to wait for the boat to come by, and then click on it, and then drag across, and then do it, which is very, very unique, special. Um, this game is good, great. Beat it. Here's the proof. 523, 135, plus 6. Every single thing is done. Don't really know what else to say. Well, actually, I guess I could go down to the lake. Go check that out. Yeah. Game is done. That is it. Now I'm just gonna walk down to the place. So Go check it out. My favorite things about this game. Favorite things I did in the game. The challenge. Okay, the challenge was amazing. I love the challenge. And also, honestly, if I had to say, that moon puzzle was very fun actually. It seemed like it would be horrible, but listening to what the guy had to say, it was very entertaining. Not really entertaining, more interesting. Well, here's the lake. It's all the geysers, every single pillar. Yeah, my favorite area, the caves. Second favorite area, the mountains. My favorite area that had a beam was, well, adding also the environmental puzzles. Well, without environmental puzzles, my favorite area was probably a treehouse. Um, and then with a beam, of course. Uh, and my favorite area with a with a with environmental puzzles too was probably the keep. The keep was already a pretty good place because of how inventive the puzzles were, but it also had even extra stuff in there. Like the environmental puzzles in that place were amazing. Yeah. If I had to rate the Witness, it would be 10 out of 10. Recommend to anyone, even people who don't do puzzle games. Wonderful experience. Would do it again if I was able to.